Othering Podcast explores the world of marginalized communities with a focus on the disabled and LGBTQ+. In our discussions, we will provide a platform for our guests to advocate and share their stories. By delving deep into their difficulties and successes, we will explore the changes necessary to improve lives everywhere. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to the Othering Podcast with Mike and Dory.
PEP Radio, part of the Pennsylvania Equality Project, advocates for the rights of LGBTQ plus people, the disabled, and marginalized communities. We play music from all 7 continents from 1928 through 2025 in English, Spanish, German, African tribal languages, Korean, and Japanese. We also offer news, history lessons, and are proud to include the Othering Podcast in our programming lineup. Tune in on the Live 365 app, Roku, and Alexa every Saturday and Sunday at 4 p.m.
Hello.
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 How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Hot. It's very hot here.
Yeah. Where are you? What state are you in?
I'm in Nevada. I'm in Las Vegas.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah, it's really hot there.
It's not letting up. What's the weather like over there?
Rainy.
Oh,
really?
Yep.
Oh,
high 80s today,
Lovely.
going to be in the 90s this weekend. But yeah, very wet. It's been raining for 11 days in a row.
I gotcha. I used to live in Portland. I get it.
Oh yeah, that's worse.
Yes.
Today we are talking to Sam. She is a late diagnosed autistic adult living with OCD, ADHD, CPTSD, anxiety, and depression. She is a 2-time stomach cancer survivor. She is a happily married lesbian and a passionate advocate. I cannot talk today.
No, you
She
can't.
is a passionate advocate for the queer and LGBTQ community. She has worked in the ADA 504 and language access coordinator for aging and disability services in our government. She has also worked for various state and other commissions throughout the past 20 years, helping the disabled and autistic community. I'm really struggling here. And she is also the host of the Neurospective Podcast that we will talk about later.
Yes.
Welcome, Sam. I'm going to stop while I'm ahead.
Yeah.
You did great. It's good to be here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for showing it. Not like you wouldn't show up, but I mean, for coming. Oh my God, you've like sent your tongue twister to me.
I just screwed it all up.
Yes, so this chat will be brought to you by the tongue twisters.
Who's going to start?
You do.
Okay, me.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I want to talk about your late diagnosis for the ADHD. I know that we've talked to a couple people that have had that issue, and us included. What sort of struggles did you find? I guess, did you struggle getting diagnosed, or did you not even know any better?
So
If that makes sense.
apparently, when I was very young, I was diagnosed, but I was in a very poor rural area, so that really meant literally nothing. And it didn't, affect any change. I wasn't put on any medication. And then I went through my life, and I was on a struggle bus for real. And it wasn't until I was an adult that someone let me know that if you're diagnosed as a child, that you're still diagnosed as an adult. And I had no idea. None. And just flashbacks of, oh my gosh, things could have been so much easier. I happened to have insurance, and so I was able to get the care that I needed to get a diagnosis and access to medication, which, by the way, has made such a difference. I know it doesn't help everyone, but for me specifically, it's changed a lot for me. I know some folks around me who aren't as fortunate, and they have not gotten a diagnosis, but it's very evident that they have ADHD or some form of it. And so without that very needed care and ongoing treatment, I see them struggle the way I used to before I had access to care. So I can really see a very clear line in the sand. I mean, I didn't struggle once I got the diagnosis, and it definitely has made a difference now knowing.
Has it helped your relationships knowing that you have the ADHD and such? Has it like made it, I guess, made you not only feel better, of course, but like made your relationships better because you understand your thought processes better?
I try not to associate a negative connotation with it, but for me specifically, I just didn't realize how bad it was, how much I was struggling in those things. One of my bigger things was interjecting at the worst possible time. And, and I'm a very capable person. I'm smart and I'm in this professional realm. And here I come, be bopping along, just interrupting conversations. And people look at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, I am, but this is not why. And so like, it just, I don't know. It was very embarrassing. I will say I carried around a lot of shame because I felt like, yeah, I know these things about myself, but once I open my mouth, it's done. And no one else knows these things about me, right?
Yes.
So it can be a very isolating experience. I would say that, it absolutely has helped my relationships, especially when I understand my thought process, or I can at least recognize them when they're taking place now because I've been able to identify them after diagnosis, outside of interjecting and interrupting people, just because I don't want the thought to fall out of my head. And I really promise it's relevant to what you're saying right now. And I really want you to see that I care about what you're saying. And it doesn't come off like that for other people who don't know what this is like. But in terms of my relationships, rambling, going on a tangent, having squirrel brain and just not forgetting, people think that you don't care because it's not registering, you're not retaining, and that's not it at all. So I think they still get annoyed with me, but at least I can tell them what it is and they have a little more grace for me now.
It's
Yes.
a very relatable story.
Yes, because I have a horrible well, not horrible, but I have a tendency to talk in circles and I ramble on, and I'll have like these moments of I get on a tangent and I can't stop until I have said every single word that has come to mind. And if you interrupt me, I will completely forget what I was even talking about.
And she does it on here all the time.
Yes, I will be sitting here and I'll be like, you know what? This really angers me. Wait a minute, what was I talking about? And it's kind of, I hate to say it like this, but it's refreshing that other people have had these experiences, because
Sure.
I don't want to feel like I'm like this weird alien type of thing that just flew in from Mars and my brain is just kind of going crazy and all of these thoughts are hitting me at once. And even though it sounds like to me in my head that it's clear and why can't you follow what I'm talking about, I know that for other people, like Mike, for instance, is just looking at me like, what the fuck just came out of your mouth? And, so I'm sure it helps our audience too, to be able to know that they're not alone, that they're not the only ones that, have these insatiable need to interrupt people and just share what they have to say. And here I am doing it now.
All good. I'm right there with you, following you. I agree with you. I think it's incredibly validating to know that you're not some freak accident and that this is a thing and that people experience these things. It's very human, right? And it's a weird thing to bond over. Like, it's a wild place to start, but you know what? Some of us were born on that side of the road, you know what I mean? And we just gotta fucking do it. And so, yeah, I think in terms of my relationships, now that I'm reflecting more, when I started with ADHD about a year and a half ago, I was overseeing a large team of people. And I have always, this was before my autism diagnosis, so I was masking and not realizing it. But masking also goes along with ADHD. And I spent my life exhausted because I felt like I had to be this hyper effective, productive, perfect person.
Yes.
And when I got to work here, I had been through some shit and I was just tired of being on all the time and not being allowed to be human myself.
Yeah.
So when I started there, I sat them down and I said, look, yo, this is the deal. This is what I live with. This is what this looks like. Sometimes shit's going to fall right out of my brain mid-sentence. I apologize. And they got so used to it that I would be giving a staff meeting and I would stop and they'd go, did your Adderall stop working? I said, sure as shit did. Let's continue. And you know what? That grace really bonded us and it really gave this awesome component to our team. I don't think I've ever been better as a manager, and I don't think I've ever had a more cohesive team, because even though they weren't neurodivergent per se, they felt comfortable to share their stuff with me, right? Oh, well, I have Crohn's disease. I have this, I have that. And so we all kind of just held space for one another. And that was a cool experience.
Yeah,
for sure.
On that note, Dory and I were both kind of unofficially diagnosed being on the neurodivergent spectrum by talking to our therapists. They kind of think it is that Dory's autistic, I'm neurodivergent. And since we've learned that, our relationship together has kind of changed because we have a better understanding of each other, a better patience for each other, I think.
Better communication, too.
Yeah, a lot of the problem was Dory didn't quite understand what I meant when I said certain things or took it the wrong way. So understanding I'm neurodivergent kind of helped her realize maybe I need to calm down and think about it a little bit more and let myself relax a little before I reply. So it definitely makes a huge difference when everyone's kind of on the same page and understand what's going on.
Yeah, because I mean, like for me, with my autism and my therapist thinks I have ADHD as well, but I would hear what he would say, or anybody actually, and I would take it either at face value and not think anything of it and be like, well, you said X, Y, and Z, so you mean X, Y, and Z, damn it. Or I would be like, oh my God, does that mean they don't like me? Or wait a minute, what does this mean? Oh no, they said the, oh no. And I would kind of like, depending upon who it was or what time it was, I would go back and forth with these things and understanding that it's because of ADHD and autism possibly has made a huge difference for even understanding my own thoughts and being able to stop myself from being like, he said this, but does he really mean this? And I think being able to understand ourselves and, you know, kind of advocate for adults getting the treatment and care that they need and the diagnoses that they need much easier than they can now is important. I mean, we're sitting here and we're bonding over the shared experiences of, you know, just word vomiting. and and you know, every so often there might be a profound statement in what I've said, but it's nice to be able to understand that. Again, for so long, I thought it was just me, and people would just look at me like, what's wrong with you? And I didn't know, and not knowing kind of makes you feel like there really is something major wrong with you, and that, you know, you're completely not human or something. And just understanding myself now compared to them, I feel so much better. I feel like now that I know better of who I am, then I'm a much happier person and I'm a much calmer person. And I feel like I can conquer the world, you know, like Pinky and the Brain.
Oh, I love that. Well, I always say you don't know what you don't know, and not just to diagnosis. I mean, just across the board. And I get that question a lot, you know, how did your life change when you got a diagnosis? And how did it make things better? And I'm like, I don't know that it made anything better. I now have something tangible that I can attach all of this miscellaneous stuff that I thought was segregated from one another and realize why and like the thought processes behind it. It doesn't change what life throws at you. It doesn't change sometimes how you react to it, but you can at least understand what's going on. And I think that's very empowering. I always think about how if we all, all encompassing, all were at least just self-aware, truly, things would be so much different, because as you were saying, you get hung up, depending on your brain, you get hung up on certain things, very specific things. And, you both might be doing that, but for very different things with very different processes. And so it's really about perspective. Yeah, I think that's the one thing that has shifted for me is my perspective. And it's helped me in a lot of ways. Yeah.
And I like the fact that you said it doesn't necessarily make life, suddenly peaches and cream and roses and, we're not like walking on clouds just because we know. But it does make a difference in the way that in helping you understand yourself and where you come from, where you're thinking these things come from. So then maybe you can stop, like Mike mentioned, where I'm able to stop and say, you know what? Maybe that's not what he means. Even though I heard him say this may not be what he's talking about. He may be thinking in terms of, A, where I'm looking at it in, the lens of Z, and it's not that.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been married for a couple of years now, but before we were married, we talked quite a bit. And you think you know someone, and then the rest of you comes out later sometime.
Wait till it's been 25 years.
Okay, so you understand, and you go, wow, I really know this person. I've spent a lot of time with them. I get them. But even in that time frame, if you haven't discussed it or, hashed it out, assessed it for yourself so that you come to an understanding, it's so strange to me, but it happens all the time where two people can be living very copacetically, very symbiotically. And I wouldn't say that it's surface level, but it's like Legos, right? Until you find the right fit, you're not truly understanding one another. And it hasn't been until my wife and I have had very awkward conversations where I'm in tears and I'm having a meltdown. And I'm like, but you said this. This is what you mean. She's like, no, girl, you're on crack. Like, this is not what I meant at all. This is what I meant. And I'm like, how did you get there? And until we have these conversations, processing these things so we can try to understand, it really makes sense why there are so many misunderstandings. I think a lot of the times people listen just to respond anyway. And it takes a lot of effort to try to understand someone else, let alone all of their weird and otherness. It takes a lot of effort. A lot of people don't pour that kind of effort into themselves, and they can only really meet you where they meet themselves. So if you find people who are interested in all of your weird and otherness, then you are already going in the right direction. I think.
That's the keeper.
And you sound like you're listening in on our conversations a lot because we have the same thing.
Exactly.
That's 100%. You said this and you mean this, and no, that's not what yes, it is. Damn it. I heard it with my own ears. And and you find that, like, and you're right, because sometimes it is one of those knee-jerk reactions where it's like, as soon as they start saying certain words, you put the defenses up because, part of it is, I think, societal harms that have happened to you as you grow up. So you're used to hearing certain things and you automatically go to that harm and think that the person that you're with is kind of jumping to that same, thought process.
Your trauma response.
Yes, that's it. Thank you.
Right.
The trauma response. And I kind of think that also that we should talk about that trauma response, because that's where a lot of arguments come in, is we're traumatized, becoming adults. And nobody really talks about it because, if you didn't get verbally abused or sexually abused, then you must have had a great and wonderful childhood. No, that's not the only forms of abuse, for one. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it wasn't from your family. It could have been, friends. It could have been society. All those lovely magazines, those movies, and everything that you see and watch and read telling you this is how you're supposed to be. This is how relationships are supposed to be. And then you get into it and you're just like, what the fuck? Like, a great example is, and I'm going to sound like the biggest dork on earth, Grease. I was a little kid and I loved Grease. I still love it.
I don't think you're a dork. I think a lot of people would agree with you.
I've put on that show so many times, I cannot tell you. I'm a theater nerd.
Me too.
So you're good.
I thought as a kid that when you go to high school that it was going to be like in Greece, where you're going to find your clique. And I didn't.
Singing and
No,
dancing down
no,
the
I didn't
hallways.
think that you sang and danced down the hallways. I knew that part wasn't real. I
When we only
hoped.
hope.
I had hoped it was real, but I knew it wasn't.
I'm glad it wasn't. I certainly didn't hope for that. I went to an all-boys school, so I really didn't want that.
Yeah, that would have been a little awkward. But I kind of expected it to be a little more innocent, though, the way that Greece was. And when I got to those, ages, started feeling those ages, I felt like a huge letdown. Like it was way worse than I expected it to be. And you can be told as much as possible that it's horrible or it's great and wonderful, but you still can't discern that until you're there. And I think that, going through puberty is awful. That's a trauma response right there.
It really is.
Did you have a lot of struggles going through school as a...
Oh, yeah. I mean, I had trouble focusing, especially if I was not interested. And for me at that time was math. I had one of those, I don't know if you've ever read this book, like A Child Called It. Like I had one of those childhoods. And then I was bounced around a lot. So there was really no security for me. So that kind of really messed me up in a way where, I had a very vagrant point of view. I wasn't getting attached to anything. I didn't put any value in like material items, even people sometimes, because I knew that they would leave. And so it prevents you from forming bonds. I did start to self-isolate. And for some reason at a young age, I think I was in the second grade that I had gone to in 3 different states. And some precious group of kids that I was sitting at lunch with said, "Oh, when I grow up, I want to be such and such." And I'm like, "Oh, I won't be alive." I don't know why I said that. I don't know if that's just a kid being weird or it's a neurodivergent response. I have heard other we're kids, other people say that they didn't ever make any life plans or dreams or goals because they didn't think they were going to have the benefit of being able to have them. For some reason, it just kind of fell off. Yeah, so in school, I had trouble focusing and I didn't have a lot of social skills. So I was a childhood bully. I bit a lot of kids. I did that. I totally did that.
Did they
I don't
taste like
remember
chicken?
it, but they told me that I did that. And I believe it. I was kind of one of those like, you're gonna be my friend type people, right? Until I learned that, that's not how you do things. But I also didn't have caregivers that were teaching me any life skills. So growing up and being a person, and as you said, puberty and all of these things that you're not prepared for, even in the best case scenario when you are prepared, it was so much worse, I think, for me. Not in a boohoo kind of way, but just every time something hit me in the world, I was so unprepared for how much something could hurt, or I thought, God, this has got to be it. And then I would hit a new low. And I think some of the social challenges I had was, and this is where learning about masking came to my rescue now, because at the time, I thought we were all just kind of figuring it out and we were living these awkward experiences where, we make mistakes and fall on our faces, but they had preparation and they kind of knew somewhat of what they were doing. Whereas I was literally learning by watching other people and learning to mimic their behavior. And so I became very good at that. Very good. I became very performative because of that trauma, because you want your parents to love you and you want to be good at everything. And so I did that. I was a huge perfectionist. And so I was good at things and good at mimicking people and not understanding why I did half the things I did. And it wasn't until a couple years ago, I went to a therapist and I said, I genuinely don't know who I am. And this was before my diagnosis. I said, I see people around me. They seem so certain. They know what they want. I look at my wife and she's just like, that is her for sure. That is who she is. And I'm just like, I don't know the things that I like because I've glommed onto what other people like because that was socially acceptable, or this was pleasing to a parent, or what have you. And so I think that so God, I can't remember. I did. I had this conversation with Rachel. She's the one that emailed you guys.
Mhm.
Um, she's she's ADHD. That's actually my ex-girlfriend. We were together a million years ago. That was one of those experiences that I'm referring to where neither of us knew what the fuck we were doing and had no preparation for it. So years later, we were able to reconvene and like be people again. But we talk about these things a lot because I think for both of us, it's become more prevalent with age,
Mhm.
the symptoms that come along with these diagnoses. And ooh, there it is. It fell right out of my head.
Yep.
There it is. There it
Happens
goes.
all the time.
Yes.
Oh, from late diagnosis. We
Mhm.
were talking about, so I was that silly person that was like, oh, if I get a diagnosis, it's going to make so much sense and it's going to solve all my problems. I'm going to know why I was weird and awkward and couldn't make friends and why people didn't like me. I got to do this because it's going to change my life. Totally did that. And it just flipped everything over on its side. And um, my best friend asked me, has this changed your life? Has it made it better for you? I mean, what's the difference having a diagnosis now? Why is it so much more traumatizing as a late diagnosed person? And I'm like, again, it doesn't change what happened to you. It doesn't change the way things occur sequentially or how you develop, maintain relationships. But if you had supports way back when and you learned a lot of the things that you needed, things could have gone a little bit differently and they didn't have to be as hard
Mhm.
or scarring or damaging. And unfortunately, you do carry those things. You form those neural pathways that literally you cannot reforge. You
Yes.
learn to live around it and, you know, hopefully you find good people who understand you and are compassionate and kind. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of damage that doesn't have to happen. And that's why I'm such a big advocate for, enhancing diagnostic
Yes.
criteria and bringing that data forward to right now I'm advocating for changes in the curriculum component of the education because there is literally no degree that provides services or trains people to provide services for adults with autism.
Yeah. I noticed that.
Only children's. Yeah. And so you have like the ABA stuff, but it cuts off at a certain age. And then they're just on their own now without any supports or resources. And then you have people like me who are like, cool, I'm learning things for the first time ever. uh,
Yes.
I would love some help. And I think that people see, low support needs or high functioning or very intelligent, and they think, oh, you've got this, you're fine. It doesn't even, it's like not even there. And I'm like, come over to my house in the morning when I can't get a strap to work the right way and I'm having a full-on tantrum on the floor and crying and screaming. Literally, it happens almost every day because the level of frustration that happens, and people don't see those parts.
No. And maybe they need
And
to.
I mean, maybe, and that's kind of why I try to invite folks who have these experiences onto the podcast
Mhm.
because I want them to talk about everything and put it out there so we can get the conversation going and grab the attention of the right people so they can get those conversations into rooms that they need to be in. And no one's ever talked about it
No, they don't.
because there was never a diagnosis. So
Because,
yeah.
I mean, I loved what you said, like 100%. I agree. And I think that for those that aren't ever diagnosed until like late, it is a huge difference between those that are late and those that get it early enough. Because even though I didn't really struggle in school, I struggled socially. And again, like I thought there was just so much wrong with me. I self isolated because I just assumed that, I'm just strange. There's not much else I can give or anything like that. And I would have troubles holding relationships with, friends and such because like past a certain point I would feel like, well, I'm either going to be moving or they're going to leave anyway, so I'm not going to try anymore or I'm not going to, put myself out there because I didn't want the rejection. And that's another thing that, nobody really talks about is that rejection feeling, especially when you're neurodivergent, and how sometimes it can be way more than, typically thought it would be. For instance, for me, it's like I'm devastated when people reject me. It seriously bothers me. And understanding that it's because I am neurodivergent helps kind of heal a little bit those thoughts and feelings that I had as a teenager and younger. And not understanding, well, nothing really happened between us. Why am I so attached? Why is my brain just screaming and crying and, feeling so much anger and hurt at being rejected when everybody else is just fine? What's wrong with me? And the fact that there were other social interactions with teachers where I was much more comfortable with teachers than I was with other kids my own age. And
Yep.
and how all of these things, and I just assumed it was because I was just weird. I was just out there, and I was, like that lone mushroom on a log.
You assume it's normal because that's all you know.
Broken Lego
Yes.
with no fit, right?
Exactly. That Barbie shoe that was left there that, doesn't have a mate. And that's how I always felt. Or, that lone sock that you get back out of the dryer where it's like, where the hell did the mate go? And that's how I felt growing up, is
Yeah.
even amongst my own family. I felt like I was really weird, really off, really out there, and I didn't understand why. And so I grew up just thinking I'm just wrong, just 100% wrong. And then finding out that it's because I think differently. And because of thinking differently, I'm going to react differently than the quote unquote neurotypicals would. Kind of makes me feel so much better, because now I can move forward with the knowledge of this is how I handle things, and understanding that I do those things, maybe I won't put myself in those positions to then, be brokenhearted or overreact and, things like that.
And I can only speak for myself, but I completely share your sentiment on feeling just like there's an acceptable level of weird and being an outsider, and then here was me over here.
Yes.
Never ever getting it, never being able to fit in. And I ended up taking all of the poor actions that were shown towards me or afflicted on me by my caretakers and by my friends and my family, people that I thought I could love and trust, who were supposed to be. And I started to turn that inward towards myself, to where now I was self-afflicting and rehashing all of that at myself as some sort of punishment that I felt that I deserved. And before I forget and it flew out of my brain, I'm sure you have heard of it, but you were talking about the feeling so deeply hurt and afflicted with the rejection. And I felt like that for years. Like, why am I like this? Why am I I've been called dramatic and overreactive and too emotional and too much. And then I learned about rejection sensitivity with ADHD. Have you heard of this?
Yep.
So once I learned that, I'm like, oh my God, it's a thing. I think I learned it on TikTok, to be honest with you. And I sent it to everyone I knew. See, it's a thing.
I learned it on
me.
Instagram. That's where I first saw it. And I was just like, oh my God, they're reading my brain. What the hell?
But again, that experience, I was a latecomer to TikTok and social media. Because I just thought it was frivolous. And it wasn't until I got there that I realized there was this entire community of people in literally any genre that you could think of. And I've learned so much more about myself and my brain and getting a diagnosis or my obsession with things being fair. Everyone makes fun of me for this. And then I stumbled upon someone's page and they were talking about, did you know that that's just how your brain is wired? Like, it's a thing. It may not be in a DSM, but it's a thing. And it just, like you said earlier, is incredibly validating, because I've gone my whole life, getting made fun of for these things. And again, being told I'm too much, too invested, I'm too easily hurt. I need to grow a thicker skin.
Yeah.
And then you start to believe that narrative because no one else is telling you otherwise. And like I said, you don't know what you know. So that you're like, okay, well, comparatively to you, I guess you're right. And I need to be better and I need to be, and it just, I probably am my own worst enemy. They started it, but I finished it. I sure as shit did. And I wish that I hadn't had to go down that path. And I think that's why it's important for us to have these conversations and continue them with many types of people, because you never know who's masking just well enough and experiencing those things that you and I have experienced.
Yes, right.
And it's when I learned about the statistics about like the incident of suicide rates in the neurodivergent community are so much higher than everyone else. I get it. I don't condone it, but I do understand.
Yes.
And, unfortunately, we went through these things ill-equipped, but we're in a different time and we're in a different place. And it's, I feel, somewhat our responsibility to make it better and bring it forward and try to help where we can.
Yes.
When we can.
Definitely. Yeah. I feel this insatiable need to not only, make sure everything is just for everybody, because that's me. And, but I want to, pay it forward type of thing, because I don't want people to sit at home and feel like they were the only person that felt like this or thought like this and end up taking their lives, because the pain is great, especially when you have all of these thoughts and these feelings and you don't understand why it's so much more, or even sometimes so much less than the people that are supposed to be, neurotypical. You watch your siblings or your parents and friends go through life and they're like, yeah, this is cool. This isn't bad. And then you're like, what the hell are you smoking? This is awful. This is terrible. I don't want to be here, or things like that. And
you're made fun of because of the way you act, but
yeah,
you don't know what the right way to act is, because when you try to change, you're made fun of for that.
Right. You're constantly either ostracized or picked on, or because you never seem to say the right thing or react the right way of how they think you should be. And, that's to say that, one, there is no real oh my God, there is no real right way to act or react to things.
There is a right way to act. Don't bully people.
Well, yeah, that too. I mean,
don't be an asshole. Otherwise, there's no right way.
Don't be like me, invite small children to be their friends. Okay, we've learned.
But the thing is that we have to have empathy for each other and understand that bullies are hurting too. And sometimes we have to find a way to be the bigger person and say, what the fuck, man? And then go through and say, look, I understand that you're probably hurting too. So let's fix that. So then that way the bully and you can heal, or, do something and make it better. And just touching that one person may not seem like a lot, but it seems like a lot to them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm going to say something, and then my question's going to be something completely different. It's going to sound like ADHD brain, but I have a method here. Something you had mentioned earlier, Dory. Growing up, I was bullied like mercilessly, pretty much as I can remember, through school. And because of that, it made me go very quiet. Yes. I learned if I talked, I'm going to get made fun of, so I'm just going to shut up and just kind of hang back and be a very, I guess, a shy person. And it just, I don't know, it really fucked me up because of that. I mean, I'm 44 and I'm just now kind of starting to open up because I realize it doesn't matter that much. But yeah, my whole life, and I don't know if it's because neurodivergent or what, but it just...
I think it's a bit
I
of
don't
both.
remember what you said that made me think of that, but there was something in there.
Well, there's a lot of something in there.
Really that you brought that up, because there was something that you said earlier, Dory, that I was going to comment on, and you kind of just married the two, which is excellent.
Thank you.
I love when things work.
I try my best.
But you were talking about, I don't remember the specifics, but basically carrying it around and having this different experience than people around you, even people who are very close to you, like siblings. And the comment that I had wanted to make towards that, which will tie in, I promise, is that for people like us, most of the time, because the world is ill-equipped, we don't have anywhere to put it. Whereas other people neurotypicals and holistic folks, they have those supports, because if your brain works the way it's supposed to, then we are willing to help you. And so that's been challenging for me, and then for other people around me. But you just spoke on getting quiet, and I was always a very loud kid. And as I got older, I became more introverted, to where now, if I never had to leave my house ever again, I would be fine. I literally just don't like interacting with people. And it's not because I don't like people. It's just I've had so many interactions where notoriously I'm like, yeah, no, it's not comfortable for me. It's not, I've got my people, who you get a different person, and then you have people that you can find and relate to and meet and have a good, rapport. But for the most part, yeah, it's really difficult. And so I actually haven't spoken on this yet to anyone, including my wife. So I've been having a challenging time at work because of the neurodiversity. And it's to the point where it's like escalating to legal matters. And I took a very marked turn with my mental health. And I come home and I try to talk things out. And my wife is an eternal optimist, and I love her, but I scold her all the time about toxic positivity, holding space. Because she's older than me. She's 50. And I think that generation is very much like, put a smile on your face, go back to work, And my generation's like, no, if I don't feel good, I'm not going anywhere. And so I would say in the last couple of months, as these things have taken a turn for me, as I keep hitting roadblocks, and I'm actually the only one advocating for myself, and there's really no one to turn to. I have found that I am becoming more silent, just because I've run out of things to say. And I think that in some cases it can feel hopeless. And when you have these really big, complicated feelings, I don't have anyone to take them to, because there are no resources. There are no practitioners that can help me. I go to this med management guy, and he's like, check out. And I'm like, they're all for kids, dude. Like there's nothing. And at least for me, I can only say there's nothing for me. I don't know how to tell you this. There's nothing that I can do. There's no one I can go to. Not really. So you just end up sitting with it. And I think after a while, people get so frustrated because they can't change it for you immediately, and it makes them uncomfortable. And I'm like, yeah, that makes two of us, but you go on about your day. And I think that right now I'm very much experiencing that, which I never even knew was a thing. Just being silent and having this. I think on my first episode, I talked about loneliness and expressing to people, like, I know what it feels like. I cannot even begin to describe to you. And I have a good life. I've been surrounded by good people for all intents and purposes, but it can be very, very lonely in a way that you cannot put into words or express to other people. And so I guess my question is to you, have you experienced that kind of loneliness? And what brought that on for you? And did anything ever make it better for you?
Yes. Hell yes. And holy fuck yes.
Yeah.
I have had horrible levels of loneliness where like you, when I was younger, I was a kid, I was always outgoing and outspoken, and, teachers and my classmates kind of made me feel like that's not how you're supposed to be. And so as time went on, I got quieter and quieter and quieter. And I started kind of like, I guess you could say, locking myself in my body, masking, so then I would look a certain way, but you would never really know me, because showing you who I had learned was not the right thing. So I would take that pain and I would eat it, basically, figuratively, not literally. And I would just stay quiet, or I would sit in my room as a teenager and stare out at the walls or the ceiling or even out the window, and just kind of sit with myself a lot, because I didn't want, I wanted to be with people, but I didn't want to be with people. It was kind of like that dichotomy of, you want to be accepted and you want to be loved and you want to with your peers, because, yeah, you're loved by your family, but it's totally different when it's family versus peers.
Hopefully, you're loved by
Well,
your
yeah,
family.
you should be
I was
loved by
gonna
your
say,
family.
in my case, it's absolutely not that.
And
Um,
and
and
that's
yeah,
bullshit.
that's a whole other level.
Under no
I
circumstances, as a family member, should you, deny your child love.
Yeah.
That's just that angers me on so many levels. But what I found that worked for me was eventually finding the right therapist. And it took until like 3 months ago
Yeah.
to finally stop being so angry and have so much disgust and hatred and such for myself, and sitting there wishing that I could have those friends, but I didn't know how to make those friends. And I thought like I was alone because, I'm disabled, so I can't go jogging with the girls in the neighborhood type of thing. And I can't do certain things. And I just didn't want to do certain things because that's just not me. I didn't want to be somebody else anymore. I didn't want to pretend like I liked things that truly did not interest me whatsoever. And so I got to a point where it's like, enough's enough. I want to be me. I want to know who I am. And then the people who love who I truly am will either stay there or will flock to me. And I got online. Well, I mean, I'd been online a long time, but I started paying attention to other people that were neurodivergent and other disabling aspects and LGBTQ people, and I started noticing myself in them. And it's the first time that I actually saw commonalities. And so it was just like a euphoric feeling started happening. And it's like, what the hell is this shit? And it was freeing. And talking to my therapist about this and seeing all of you guys online and talking to you in your DMs and, sharing memes and things like that made me feel like I am not alone. I am not the only person that all of this affects in this manner. And so that's where a lot of that lonely feeling started to kind of go away, was finding my people and fellow weirdos like me, and knowing that no matter what age we are, we all share those commonalities, and how welcoming everybody is made a huge difference for me.
My biggest problem's always been I care about what other people think. So because of that, I never acted like myself with anyone outside of like home. So I was never really myself. So I never felt like I fit in or felt like I belonged there. Never felt like I fit in at work or belonged at work. I always felt like that outcast because I was so worried to act like myself and to be just me. I always tried to just kind of hide in the corner, and I guess that's masking at its finest. But
Yes.
and I would always do that, which is kind of where my loneliness came from. So my completely random off-topic subject was, I wanted to ask you about your 2-time surviving stomach cancer. One, congratulations.
Yes.
And
Congratulations, and I'm glad
yeah,
and thrilled that you are here.
I guess, I don't know, can you just kind of talk about that experience?
Yeah. So what had happened was in and around I don't know, circa 2016-ish, I was in a relationship with a person that I have no idea why I was ever involved with this person, but it was terrible breakup. And so there was a series of events that occurred. We had a roommate. It started before we got into this apartment, but long story short, we finally got to this place. We were settled. The roommate bailed after literally signing a new lease. My girlfriend at the time quit her job at Disneyland and just didn't want to anymore. And we had all collectively gotten a dog together, and we lived upstairs, and no one wanted to walk him. And, it was just like this challenging thing where it was just this perfect storm of things. And so our roommate moved out. We broke up. I needed to find a place to live because I couldn't afford. I tried to rent out rooms doing Airbnb. That was a bust. And yeah, I did what I could to prolong it, the inevitable, but I still had to break the lease, and I couldn't find a place for him to safely reside because his name was Finnick. That's what they named him at the shelter because he was very anxious. Uh, and his anxiety presented as anger. So he kept being returned back to the shelter. So he was actually there the longest. And they gave him to us for free. And, it was a development, but I went to the vet. I went to everyone I knew and I was like, can someone please take care of him? But everyone was scared of him because of the way his anxiety presented and they couldn't see through it. And so I ended up having to put him down. And I was trying to find a place to live. I've had bouts of homelessness. I was living in my car for a while because, like I said, I do have family, but I don't really have family. And there was family in that area. And finally, a friend of a friend was like, hey, my parents are renting a room. Why don't you come live here? I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to live with strangers. That's fine. And I was driving Uber at the time because there was a transition with work. I'm telling you, it was just this perfect storm of events. And right around that time, I started to notice certain things about my body, things that ways I was reacting. But the tricky thing about stomach cancer is it mimics the after effects of consuming typically a standard American diet. So if you have like indigestion or, burping a lot or sour stomach or like acid reflux, if you don't know otherwise, it's not going to register that there's something potentially happening. I went in for something completely different. And while I was getting scanned, they found things. And so I was immediately put into treatment. I went through several rounds of radiation, but I had to keep working because I still needed insurance to pay for it. It was very expensive. It's $50 a day, 5 days a week for 3 months at a time. It was expensive. Granted, I was working from home, but I still had to work, and so that was challenging. And I was driving myself to and from radiation every day. It was difficult because I literally didn't have anyone. I've grown up without people. And that didn't work as well as we had hoped. And so then I had surgery and they removed about 90% of my stomach. And so that presented its whole other, now I have GERD and I have challenges with certain foods and it's a whole thing. I got better. It was cool. It came back a little while later. But at that point, there was a chemotherapy drug called Lonsurf that had been previously indicated for something else. And now it was contraindicated for this now after they cut up my stomach.
Of course.
And they were having, and I was like, great, thanks. I was talking to my doctor and I kind of lucked out, to be honest with you, the timing. I mean, if you can call getting it lucky, but considering the circumstances, I didn't have the money. I was barely making ends meet. And the doctor had expressed that their reps were coming in all the time, the pharmaceutical reps. And the data that you see on these medications, when they're testing these medications, they're testing them on people who are stage 3 and stage 4. So they're like flat out dying left and right. So that data is actually very skewed. And they're like, yeah, we're not going to sell this drug unless this data looks better. We need people who are not going to actively die tomorrow. And so the trade-off was I could participate for free if they could have access to my data and use it for their whatever. And I'm like, knock yourself out. I'm not doing anything with it. So I got access, luckily. And they put me, I tend to err towards vegetarianism and veganism just because of texture things. But they put me on a ketogenic diet for a while and I abided, and that actually resolved pretty quickly the second time. So I'm not sure if it was a combination of the two or one or the other, but that was a lot less on my body. But in those times, like I said, I didn't have anyone. And so I had my dad who lived 20 minutes away from me. But his dad he had pancreatic cancer very suddenly. And that's kind of like once it's in the pancreas, you're done.
Yeah.
And So the entire time he was taking time off work and going up to where my grandpa was living and taking care of him. And so he was like, "You're good, right? Like you're good." There was a time, oh, it was the time when I went to go get surgery to remove my stomach. My best friend was a nurse and she was in nursing school and had finals, so she couldn't take me. My dad couldn't drive me because he and his friends had special Jack White tickets in San Diego. And we were living in Southern California at the time. And I wasn't allowed to take an Uber because they don't let you because of like liability stuff, being under the influence of medication and stuff. So, and I get it. And it was very far away from me. So I had to ask that ex-girlfriend that I used to live with, who was extremely abusive, to drive me. And she also stayed with me afterwards because my dad just didn't. He would just pop his head in and, "How's it going? Okay, cool, bye." And then when she got bored, she left, and I was literally recovering alone. And so when I talk about that in my experiences throughout my life, like I have truly spent a lot of alone. And when I think about the concept of alone, it's not necessarily being alone. In fact, I have found that in some cases in the wrong rooms, I can feel more lonely surrounded by people. But you know, when you go through these things and you see people around you, especially neurotypical people who have access to these families and these endless, you know, chosen families and friends and all these people rallying in your corner, and there's literally no one you can turn to, it kind of, you know, outside of having this like shame of everything else you're going through, it kind of reiterated for me the same old shit from before. Like, well, of course people aren't around you. You were weird. You were this, you were that. You were not lovable. You were not enough of this, of that. And so I did a lot of beating myself up. And I have a theory, because I love science and I love energy and things. And so, yeah, when I started admitting that I didn't like certain things, I came to terms with the fact that I love dinosaurs and like neuroscience and outer space and quantum physics all the live long day. Okay. So I love the concept of energy scientifically. And throughout the years, I've had crippling anxiety and a lot of rumination, which I think has to do with the ADHD. And because of the way I was treating myself over the years, just literally ingesting all of this hatred that I was turning inwards, I felt like I gave it to myself because they said that, you know, it's not very common in people my age at that time. And so I was like, I'm sure anything is possible. Obviously, it's not something we can prove, but I definitely have that theory that, you know, words are important and they can harm or heal, like that study with the plants in the water. Have you, you know, it makes a difference.
It does
So
make a
that
huge
was
difference.
my big fancy cancer story.
And even if it's not, you know, true at all that you can cause yourself to have certain illnesses or sicknesses and it's just luck of the draw, still saying horrendous things to yourself still makes a difference because it weakens your resolve to be around, and it kind of makes you feel like if I can't get other people to like me or whatever it is that's going through your head and I don't like me, why in the hell am I still here then? And those words,
I think this all the time.
yes, those words are, you know, just, they're words, but they mean so much more than just words. And, you know, saying, well, sticks and stones may break my bones and all that stuff. Words will hurt you. They can hurt you. And I get the sentiment, not sediment, is saying, you know, don't let them hurt you. But I think when you're not neurotypical, it's even harder to sit there and say, oh yeah, I'm not going to let you hurt me. Because we don't understand our thought process, especially when you're late diagnosed. So we don't get that, I guess you could say, inner strength type of thing to be able to say those words don't matter. And, you know, what you think doesn't matter, because all that matters is how you feel and how you think about yourself. And that is still true, but it's still difficult to not care about what other people think.
I was going to say, I've gone my life feeling like I'm incapable of protecting myself from the harm that can come my way or not being affected. And that's a really tricky concept to convey to people who just don't understand.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Oh,
I get what, yeah,
yeah.
totally agree with you.
When you go through certain shit for long enough, you don't know different, and that's just what you think is normal.
Right. And sometimes we got to understand that not normal is okay, and sometimes not normal is not okay. And we need to understand that when it's an abusive situation, I don't care who you are. When it's an abusive situation, please find some way to get the help you need so that you can leave that and be safe and be okay. And go wherever you need to go, talk to whoever you need to talk to. There are people that actually do care. Yes, it does sometimes, and I am guilty of thinking this too, that it feels like the world hates you. And especially when you look certain way, that your color or your features or your disability is going to hinder people liking you. And sometimes, unfortunately, that is true, but it's not the majority of us. A lot of us will, love you and give you everything that you need in hugs or whatever so that you can feel like you're a whole person and understand that those people that want to treat you poorly and badly are some of the most fucked up people themselves. And, they just don't want to find a way to get help. And that's not on you. That's not your fault at all.
Time has gone by really, really fast.
Yes.
I didn't realize how far in we were, but we're past our hour. So I wanted to let you talk about your podcast for a little bit here and let people know where to find you and how to listen to you and everything.
Oh, as someone who's autistic, I literally have to prepare everything I say or I just trip over everything.
I love tripping over my words.
I'm having this conversation with you, Dory, and I just, the more I hear you, I'm like, you are AuDHD and a half, like you, because I am too, and I'm like, I recognize that in you, and I've got to tell you, like, having your brain going completely opposite directions is really difficult to navigate.
Yes. Yes, it is.
It is hard.
And you meant, while you're looking up your stuff, you mentioned at how you have troubles, standing up for yourself. And I heard my exact words reiterated to me. I am terrible at standing up for myself. I am like awful. You can walk all over me and, things like that. Not literally, please don't step on me. But I will also be your fiercest protector. Though, if somebody says something wrong about somebody I care about, you might want to leave the room. Actually, you might want to leave the country, the state, the world, because I will get incredibly pissed off. And it's just, that's how I am, though. But I can't seem to do it for myself. And it's frustrating.
Isn't that so strange?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, you could call me most names in the book, and I will shut down, and I'll be like, okay. And I will take it internalize it, and all that stuff. But if you say any of those things to somebody, even if I don't know you, if I hear somebody being picked on, I will stand there and I will rip you a new one if I have to get you to leave that other person alone.
So I started the Neurospective Podcast because I actually, it's kind of a chain of events after my diagnosis and kind of where I landed with aging and disability. My specific role was overseeing some boards and commissions, and one of them was the Autism Commission. And it was kind of an aha moment. I'm going to my med management practitioner and I'm expressing to him my frustration that there are no supports for autistic folks who are adults or late diagnosed adults. And he, off the top of his head, rattles off this organization. And I'm like, oh, great, that's awesome. And I go to their website and it is geared for younger adults and children. And then once I started to facilitate the CASD, I realized that they were members on the Autism Commission coming to us saying, we need a strategic plan to put things in place. And I was like, I'm literally the only person in the state of Nevada in this unique position. And I'm in, like, they're trusting me to guide their advocacy efforts and help them write a strategic plan. So if I don't know about it, it literally doesn't exist.
Yes.
And I've experienced this firsthand with, wanting supports and needing resources and assistance. And so that's kind of what drove me towards wanting to start a nonprofit, to kind of bridge that gap, and eliminate those systemic barriers and try to kind of connect the community of people as well. But I was somewhat of a chicken shit. And so I did a sidestep and I did a podcast instead. Because I also in my job used to collect data from, the people of Nevada, and I would do a needs assessment and I'd come back and write my handy dandy reports and give it to legislation and hope that they would, do things with their power. And I thought, wow, what a natural way to not only connect with other people because of the loneliness as well, and not having anyone around me. I mean, I love them, but literally not having anyone around me who gets it and wanting that kind of connection and understanding. I was like, if I have these conversations with people and I'm meeting folks and I'm asking them to talk about themselves and their lives, they're all going to have different stories and experiences. And these are the things that matter to bring forward. And so that's where the podcast started. And I have, in such a short amount of time, received such an overwhelming amount of feedback, like, oh my God, you don't even know, I needed this. I was where you were. And I'm thinking, awesome, this is great. And then I've also met a ton of people who otherwise would never have come into my space. And like you were talking about earlier, like finding your people and finding those connections. I had interacted with people I had never met before who I didn't know their names. And within a day, we were, like you said, sending memes and telling jokes and conversing with one another like I had known them for the last 5 years. It was very strange for me.
Yes.
And I just was like, oh my God, I have found my tribe. And so I knew that if I could have the capacity to feel as like lonely and isolated as I have, there are others like me who could benefit from this as well. And so it kind of reiterated that it's a good thing. Now I am building the nonprofit, but that's what we do. We, try to create the support that we'd never had and to start conversations to advocate for resources that currently don't exist. And so that's basically the gist of it. And right now we are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Amazon Music. And we are also on Instagram at Neurospective.podcast.
And thank you very much for doing that, because, we all have voices that need to be told so that we can get the help and such that we need, so that we can stop having to grow up without any resources, without any understandings, without any access to other people, so that, we all understand, and maybe we can bring down those numbers of bring down those numbers of people who want to commit suicide, so that they understand that we're all here for them. And, there's a lot of us that have felt like you, that have thought like you, and we're here, we're thriving, and we'll help you get there too, because paying it forward is such a wonderful feeling.
We're going to need a part 2 because there's so much more to talk about.
Yes.
And we're already an hour and 20 minutes in.
I know. I was just going to ask you guys about your podcast. I mean, I guess unofficially, if you wanted to cut it out, I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
I wanted to say thank you for joining us, and this has been wonderful. And
Yes.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to spend time with you and meet you guys finally.
It was great to meet you, and I thank you so much. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for listening. Please leave a rating for us wherever you listen. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok.
Othering Podcast is brought to you by Loudcore Productions in conjunction with your support. Your host, Mike and Dory Morris, graphics by Joshua Morris, and join us next week on the Othering Podcast.